My name is Christian Loucq, Kojo Chinto Loucq in Ghana, means because I was born on a Monday, Kojo. I'm the second boy of my family, Chinto. So if one day you happen to become a coach, which I wish many of you in West Africa, you're going to have very quickly an African name. And you'll do what we all do on Friday when we are in West Africa and in Accra, where we have one of our centers. We call it African Friday, and we wear our African attire, just to celebrate a little bit with our colleagues down there in Accra. So thank you for coming to this session of SEED, the Stanford Institute for Innovation in Developing Economies. We are, and during the next coming minutes and before, in fact, the main part of this program, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about who we are. We were given a couple of years ago an immense task, transforming the life of 200 million poor people in developing countries by Bob and Dottie Kings when they made us a formidable gift of $150 million. And started working on that model, we decided to look at one aspect to fight against poverty, an aspect which is create jobs, something that is sustainable. And how can we do that, and how did we decide to do it? By focusing on small and mid-sized companies, enterprises, in countries in region of Africa. We started and decided to start in West Africa because this is where there was, and we felt there was an immense gap to fill at that level, and by selecting companies to transform them. The whole idea that we have is transformational growth, not 1 or 2%, but make those companies large organizations that can give jobs to a lot of people, because as recently published by the World Bank and the IFC, every new job created can, in turn, allow the creation of 7 to 25 new jobs. And that's, the ecosystem effect that we would love to have in West Africa. So now, SEED has got a history of, I was calculating just coming here, 16 months in West Africa. 3 groups of coaches, and I'll talk a little bit more in a couple of minutes about that, have been on the ground working with companies and working on transforming the companies, but also transforming themselves, which is a very important aspect of going and working in Africa in contact with those companies. It's a wonderful time, an extraordinary time working with people that are highly motivated to give to their country and develop very sizable companies. How do we work? We select a set of companies, cohort of 30 companies, and we take them in what we call a transformation program. That is made of 4 intensive weeks, during which faculty of the business school of Stanford are coming and are having a very hands-on training. And many of those CEOs and owners of companies coming to the training are always saying, I was told that I was going to be challenged. I did not expect to be that challenged. And then, after that first week, we match them with coaches. Who are they? They are people that have decided at one stage of their life that they wanted to give back, do something for developing countries, and they are giving, and they are doing to see the wonderful gift, time and expertise. And they come to West Africa, and they are going to start, they are being matched during that week, we work together, and they are going to go and start working very closely with those companies, CEOs, all the top management, and all the other level of the company. Those companies are, and have, when we take them on board, from $150,000 to $10 million of turnover, top line. And we start working on all aspects. They are most of the time, family-owned companies, and very specific items that are African aspect of business today. We work in Ghana, Nigeria. We work also in Côte d'Ivoire. Unfortunately, we've stopped working in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea for reasons that you know. And all activity are still very much going on. At this point in time, we have enrolled and we are working with close to 50 companies, and we have a new cohort of 28 companies that should start their transformation program early December. So a couple of things. You've got a couple of documents that were given to you when you came, at the beginning of, at the entrance of this meeting. And I would like just to have a very good explanation of what we are doing. You have in that document a form which we would very much encourage you to fill, and I hope that many of you, when they are going to come to the little boxes saying, I'm interested in the SEED volunteer coaching program, or I am interested in the SEED volunteer advisor program, are going to tick the box. There are two programs, one on the ground and one here, advisor. People that have agreed that they cannot go on the ground because multiple reasons, but they are available eventually to advise on the phone and through teleconference companies and coaches on the ground that need support. So if you can do that, and that will help us to keep in touch with you. And I would seriously, we're going to have now the pleasure of having a panel for coaches that were the first to go on the ground, to have the first experience. They were a little bit the pioneers, they will tell you. We learned together to put in place an initiative, an experiment. They're going to tell you a little bit more. So without losing time, I'm going to call Colin Dobbs is going to, and has agreed to moderate and facilitate this panel. And I'm going to ask our four coaches. You have their pedigree and their little bit of resume of theirs in the additional paper that has been there. We are going to have Clinton Etheridge, Ed Forman, Jane Swanberg, and Bill Scull that are going to come and join us. So without losing any time, I'm going to disappear and leave the floor to this panel.
An impressive looking group, huh? So thank you, Christian. So I will say a couple of words quickly as the moderator. My name, again, is Collins Dobbs. I do work here at the GSB full-time, and I'm an instructor and a leadership coach focused in on experiential learning and a number of courses. Some of you may have heard of a course called Touchy-Feely. That's one of the courses. One of the new courses, Leadership Labs, Path to Power, and other courses. And so I've had the pleasure of also being part of the SEED faculty that teaches experiential leadership on the ground for the transformation program. So that's where I got to know these fine coaches. So without further ado, that's who I am. I'd like to start with our first coach, Jan Swanberg. So Jan?
Akwaba, everybody. This is Twi for welcome. That's the only Ghanaian word that I know. But I'm here to talk about a 2-minute snapshot of what it's like to be a coach in West Africa. So first question, where did we live? This is the apartment building that we lived in. We had an apartment on the 5th floor with air conditioning and a backup generator that worked when the power went out. It worked most of the time. What did we eat? Lots of seafood in Ghana. Grilled tilapia is one of their specialties and quite delicious. How do we get around? Driver. This is very, very important because in Accra, there are no addresses. There's just no numbers, no street signs, no nothing. And so the drivers get around based on landmarks. So you say, well, you go to C&B Flats, you go up the hill, turn right at the big tree, and look for the oatmeal salesperson and take a right. And now if he's not there, it can be a problem. Who did we deal with? Sorry, my hat. We had 6 clients across 6 industries across 3 countries. And here I am with my Nigerian paint manufacturer, Majik. We met at the SEED Center for the intensive sessions where we did strategy, and then I went frequently to Lagos, Nigeria to meet with him at his paint company where we did one-on-one work. Sometimes I dealt with my clients at the SEED Center where there were better AV capabilities and we did brainstorming and we could meet with clients and it was very, very useful. And sometimes I went to their clients. Here I am at the Ghana Cement Company, and I think everyone would appreciate the style of corporate art that they have in West Africa. But we met with this client and had a very interesting time so they understood what their clients were doing. Sometimes we dealt with the entire company. This is a mobile app developer in Cote d'Ivoire. We did a lot of design thinking training, and this particular company, everyone in the company wanted to participate, but there was no room big enough at the company to do the session, so we did it outside, and it was raining, and we had to use a sheet as a screen. So it just shows the adaptability of people in Africa. They make things happen and they make do. So sometimes we did the presentations in the Seed Center where they had much more sophisticated AV capabilities. But it was not all work and no play. We have my pals here, the fellow coaches plus Kwaku, and we definitely developed a wonderful bond with each other. And Ed and I did a lot of traveling. Here we are at Lake Volta, which is the second largest man-made lake in the world, a hydroelectric dam, which is actually run by a Stanford MBA. So if this kind of adventure appeals to you, I would recommend that you apply, because in Africa, you never know who or what you might meet.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about the intensives. And so there's basically 3 weeks of instruction over the course of the 6 months that we're involved with the cohort companies. And this is when Stanford professors come in and teach their subject to the cohort companies. And so the goal really for the intensives is threefold. So first, part of transformation is changing the mindset of the cohort companies, the executive teams of the companies that we're working with. And so that their mindsets are shifted, so their expectations are raised, so they actually believe that they can build a bigger, sort of perhaps a multinational company that they weren't otherwise envisioning. The second piece is, after you have that transformational vision, then you need to land it. And so the other purpose of the faculty was really to give them the latest thinking in business basics. And so the intensives covered subjects that you might imagine: marketing, strategy, organizational development, finance, accounting, operations, supply chain. And the third thing that the intensives did was really cause the cohort to bond. You know, it's often said it's lonely at the top. And one of the things that was surprisingly energetic, or sort of generated energy in the cohort, was these people were ecstatic to meet other CEOs. They were very excited to have other people that had their same set of issues that they could sort of share both lessons and problems with. And so that's sort of, in a nutshell, what the intensives were about. And so the faculty that came were definitely the A-team. I remember the teaching being strong at the business school, the intensives much stronger. Hal Lee, for example, got a double standing ovation talking about supply chain. I think even at a supply chain conference, you don't get double standing ovations for supply chain. Jim Patel came and did a number of different things for the cohort. The first intensive was typically leadership, and Collins would come and do a very interesting set of cases around family-run businesses. Jim would do design thinking, which is very much delivered the shock and awe and sort of mind shift changing that the intensives were intended to do, and also broke the ice between the various cohort members. And that was, as we led up to the first intensive, there was much discussion about would design thinking, would the experiential learning work well with the West African crowd. We knew that they were formal. We knew that they would show up dressed in business suits, and so whether they were going to work with staplers and scissors and cut out paper and stuff to do the design thinking workshop was an open question, but it worked brilliantly. And the third subject was Hal. And so Professor Rajan came and talked about accounting without mentioning double entry, which is very impressive. And I mean, very effective at sort of introducing, some were financially strong, others were not, and this was a very effective way of introducing the cohort to financial principles. And so you should imagine a 3-week MBA, spread out over a week, and then 2 half weeks, 6 weeks later, and then 6 weeks after that, followed by a week at the end, each covering about 3 subjects. I've forgotten my slides. So lots of interactive experiential learning, business model canvas, and the first intensive, or one of the intensive, happened to be on the Independence Day for Nigeria. So the Nigerians had a cake and sang the national anthem.
Thank you, Bill. Clinton Etheridge.
Good afternoon. My name is Clinton Etheridge, class of '74, and I wanted to tell you about Vesta Oil Mills, which is one of my companies. Vesta Oil Mills is a husband and wife management team. The husband is an executive MBA, he's a mining engineer, and the wife is an accountant. And Vesta Oil Mills is one of the largest soybean processors in Ghana. So how do they process soybeans? They smash the soybeans, and they get 2 byproducts. One is crude oil, which gets used for industrial purposes, and the other is soybean cake, which gets used for poultry feed. And Vesta Oil Mills is one of the most important companies in the Ghana food ecosystem because they source their soybeans locally from small-scale farmers rather than importing them. And so Vesta Oil Mills is growing, profitable, and high visibility in Ghana because of their place in the food ecosystem. As a result, a number of financing sources wanted to talk to them. So what was the financing need? The financing need, as the company saw it, was to get investments in equipment that would make their products more valuable. So they wanted to turn the crude oil into edible soybean oil, and they wanted to produce soybean cake that had less oil. So what was my role? Well, the company, the husband-wife team, were busy running the company on a day-to-day basis. But I, as their executive coach, was able to sit back and evaluate the financing proposals that they were looking at. So I met with the company, I met with the board. This is a board meeting in Kumasi, Ghana, and the gentleman in the center is the chairman of the board. So he is a Ashanti chief, but his day job is as a commercial insurance broker in Ghana, and he's also the vice president of the Ghana Chamber of Commerce. So what I did was to meet with the company, meet with the board, talk to the bankers, and also whisper in Kwesi's ear. And so I remember that one of the financing sources came up with a proposal that had an onerous condition that involved a feasibility study that would have cost the company anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000. And I advised Kwesi to turn down that proposal. And he did so. And after he turned down the proposal, the company was jumping up and down and didn't want to take no for an answer. And they kept on sending him emails. So Kwesi didn't know what to do, and I advised Kwesi to just ignore the emails and let the situation settle down and pass away, which it did. And so I think, and when I was leaving Ghana in April, the company got another financing proposal on better terms and conditions for the same equipment, and they're going forward with that and implementing that proposal. So I think this is an example of a company and a situation in which a Stanford Seed coach could provide some practical information. And I just wanted to show you some of the other. This is a picture of the husband and the wife And I'm with them, and this is my fiance, the lady in the white. She came to visit me, and we went to see Vesta Oil Mills together. And this is a picture of me with Kwesi that was taken on the last weekend in March, my last weekend in Ghana. And this is a picture. I said he was an executive MBA, and he got his executive MBA from the Ghana Institute for Management and Public Affairs in Accra. And the company and the husband and the wife and the family are in Kumasi, which is about 250 miles away from Accra. And Gimpa, where he got his MBA, his executive MBA, is in Accra. So I was the only friend or relative who was able to attend his graduation, and I was able to take a series of photo albums for him that he valued greatly. And this is a picture of me with my Ghana customers. This was taken in March, and Kwesi Sear and the other folks are here also. So I just wanted to give you a little insight into what it was like to be a Stanford Seed coach and to work with one specific company.
Thank you, Clinton. Ed Forman.
So I feel obligated before talking about my client, Eden Tree, to just say something about my outfit, which I hope you're all going to emulate because it has a lot of character to it. I'm going backwards. Can you get me going forwards, please? We're married. It's okay, I can ask. So one of my clients was married in Lagos, and Jan, being her stylish self, went in full West African, and me, being my somewhat boring and traditional self, went in a business suit. And I can tell you that I was the one that stood out, not Jan. So Jan's client, who was with us at the wedding, brought this to me because he said, look, if you're ever going to go to a West African again, don't embarrass me. So here's my suit. So I'd like to tell you about one of my clients, Eden Tree Limited. Eden Tree's mission is to bring safe, nutritious produce to everyone. A really important mission. Here's the managing director, Catherine, who, when we first arrived in Ghana, took us on a tour of her farm, which provides about 20% of the raw materials that they process to turn into safe, nutritious food. To give you a feeling for the level of agriculture and the level of technology, this is the farm. These are the men who did the farming, and they have all of the farm's equipment there at their side. I don't think I saw a single tractor in my entire time in Ghana. One of the things that Catherine was a wizard at, and by the way, Catherine had been a banker in London due to circumstances in her life, came back. Her deal with her ex-husband was she wasn't going to work. She loved to grow things. She got bored. She started planting her garden. She started taking stuff from her garden out to sell, and it all started from there. But one of the things she became was an absolute wizard at extracting NGO dollars. We call this non-dilutive equity. And she was particularly good with USAID, which provided her with these water tanks. Thank you, fellow Americans, which are very, very important to provide year-round. These were their high-value herbs that were grown at their own farm. But the process kind of looked like this. Produce was trucked in from their farm and about 20 other farms to their processing plant, where it was evaluated for raw material quality and weighed. Then the produce was washed using the best available technology at the time. Then it was bagged and sorted, was placed in their refrigeration system, went out by their truck, also provided, I think the Dutch government provide the refrigerated truck, went out on the truck, both to a store they ran as a store within a store at a supermarket. Think of like a cosmetics counter in a department store. This is produce adjacent to a supermarket, as well as to regular supermarkets. The key challenge here is that they were offering safe, nutritious produce. It kind of costs more to bring it through the supply chain and through the processing chain, but also how in stores would consumers differentiate? So we had a brand, the Eden Tree brand, because guess what? There ain't no FDA. There may be something called the FDA, but they didn't have much of an impact on the safety of the food supply. So what we were doing was associating the Eden Tree brand with safe, nutritious food. Also, what we did was we had an employee in each market essentially detailing our area in terms of making sure the presentation of our products was the most appealing, and also when people came to buy our products, talking with them about the various ways they could cook these products and combine them into recipes, and also about their superior nutritional benefits. As you can imagine, scaling the business was somewhat difficult, given the technology we were using. And furthermore, foreign supermarket chains, primarily from West Africa, but also Walmart, were coming into Ghana, and their expectation was to have very sophisticated suppliers. So really, the core of my project when I was there was to work with them to essentially transform their operation so they could qualify as a supplier to these more sophisticated companies. And qualifying, it's not just the product, but it's the information systems and the reliability and the process and all kinds of things. One of the other wizardries that Catherine accomplished is she managed to get USAID to pay $300,000 on a team of global consultants who came in to help build an operational plan, and fundamentally to provide a roadmap for modernizing the business. These were food processing experts. The fellow who's talking now is Moldavian. The fellow next to him in the background was a Ghanaian who spoke Moldavian and translated into English. Then there was a guy, they're not pictured, there was a guy from Brazil who was actually Serbian in background. And then there was an American team leader. But they really put together the fundamental information that really not only provided a trustworthy roadmap, but also simplified the due diligence for professional investors, equity investors, because guess what? There's not a number written on a piece of paper in a business in West Africa that you could trust. I mean, that's just not been demanded in the economy. So they did that, and the result was 650 pages. I worked with Catherine to refine that into something of a more reasonable length, and then to market the investment opportunity in Eden Tree to a set of investors that we targeted. And one of the things I'm very, very proud of is by the time we left in December, we had a term sheet, and I'm waiting for the bottle of champagne to arrive, which Catherine promises me will come from Ghana directly, to celebrate the money in the bank account. So this was very gratifying. And one thing I think people who know me well know is, about my closest contact in life to agriculture is probably writing checks to the gardener. But I think that one of the points I want to make is in working with these clients, that which we learned when we were here, the almost new MBA you get during these intensives, as well as the experience and wisdom we have collected as business people, provides a very solid foundation. And where I found myself able to learn about 6 different industries that I knew nothing about, and hopefully to have provided useful counsel to my clients. Thanks very much.
So I want to pivot off of Ed's last point and ask a question to the panel. And that's, I've had the pleasure of having conversations with you and have heard some of how this experience has impacted you personally. So I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing from your perspective, beyond the helping the companies transform, what's been some of the impact, the positive impacts on you personally of taking on this mission? And so I can look at Jan.
I think my experience in Ghana has given me an incredible appreciation for the emerging African entrepreneur. These people who run these companies do it in a way there's not reliable power, there's no access to capital, and the education system that they're dealing with is drill and kill. So they don't have a workforce that is like out-of-the-box thinkers or creative. But at the same time, these Ghanaian and Nigerian Cote d'Ivoire entrepreneurs have the most positive outlook on life, and they are plunging ahead, and they really valued the participation of the coaches. So I think for me, the most impact is of my deep, deep love and understanding and appreciation for the challenges of West Africa and my optimism for the future there, because I think there's just an immense amount of potential.
Yes, the Stanford Seed experience had a lot of impact on me. It strengthened my commitment to what I call the new emerging Africa. And it was very personal for me because I've had a lifelong love affair with Africa all my adult life, ever since I first went there in the Peace Corps in Gambia in 1970, right before I went to Stanford. And so when I was coming to Stanford from Gambia, from the Peace Corps, I told myself, first time around, I saw Africa from the bottom up as a Peace Corps volunteer and a math teacher. Next time around, I wanted to see Africa from a different perspective as a businessman. And that didn't happen over the course of my banking career for a number of reasons, but finally Stanford Seed came along and allowed me to get a chance to use my personal skills and experience, to leverage my personal skills and experience as a businessman to make a contribution to the continent. And I found that very gratifying.
So, Bill, I don't know if you want to weigh in on this. I know we've had a brief conversation about this.
So my background is high-tech marketing. And one of the things that I loved about Seed is that I was able to take sort of the full measure of my career and apply it to helping the entrepreneurs that we were working with. And so in contrast to something like Saving the Cheetahs, where my marketing experience in Silicon Valley would not have accounted for much, helping entrepreneurs there, they were facing very much some of the same sorts of problems that we see here, and being able to help them in a way that sort of propelled their businesses forward was immensely satisfying. And it was an adventure to be immersed in a completely different business culture, where all the things that you think you know are not necessarily true. And so there's a discovery process about how will this turn out? How will this work? How will I, what's the best way to sail this idea or float this idea into the CEO's brain? And so it's very much was an adventure and an immensely satisfying one, because helping these entrepreneurs move the needle, helping these businesses scale is great.
Ed, do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I'd bring in is the lifelong friends I made among my clients. I'm still in touch with them. I'm kind of feel in some cases I'm the first one they call when they have a business problem or opportunity. These are amazing people who have managed to get something going against all odds. And many of them were educated outside the country and by choice came back. I doubt because of superior financial opportunities, but because they saw in their skills and knowledge the ability to make a difference for the people in their communities. But I can't overstate the meaning of these relationships to me and how much it's impacted me.
So in a couple moments, we're going to pass a mic for questions, but I wanted to ask one more question to set a tone, if you could, just a couple of responses. Because Christian said at the beginning that hopefully maybe some of you will be really interested in this journey. And so maybe the question would be, what might you tell someone, or just a quick piece of advice for someone who is thinking about becoming a seed business coach? And anyone can take that. Bill?
The advice would be do it. Don't think about it, just do it. I mean, you'll come up with all kinds of considerations if you put your mind to it, but do it. It will change your life.
And I would add that you can make a difference. You think like, oh my God, I don't know about West Africa, I don't know this, I don't speak Twi. Doesn't matter. I think the fact that you have the 20 to 30 years of business experience is completely transferable. And no matter what industry you're working in, there are many things that you can draw upon in your experience and also your network that would be really a great opportunity.
And I'd say it's a great experience if you're the type of person who's motivated to make a contribution to what I call the new emerging Africa. If you're ready to roll up your sleeves, if you're adaptable and flexible and willing to make a contribution to partner with these small and medium enterprise companies that are the real engine for growth on the continent, then I think this is a wonderful experience, could be the experience of the lifetime. At the same time, I think we have to be very careful about not trying to impose what I call a Silicon Valley perspective on what we do. In other words, if you come across as, I'm from Stanford, I'm from Silicon Valley, I'm here to help you, that could be perceived as condescending, or worse, it runs the risk of coming across as neocolonialist. But if you come with an attitude of humble inquiry and partnership and helping these companies get on the path to transformation, then that can be a wonderful experience. It was a wonderful experience for me, and it was a wonderful experience for the folks here up on the panel.
I can only second what my co-panelists have said. Suspend disbelief and do it, particularly if you're at a stage in your life or your career where you can move laterally, where some of your obligations are gone, or frankly, in my case, I had just done enough iterations of what I had been doing to just not want to do another one. But this was something where I could take everything I knew and learned and just apply it in an incredibly different and satisfying way.
Okay, great. Thank you. So with that as a preamble, I'm going to open this up for audience questions. And we have mics coming around, and I see a mic coming here and a mic coming here. So, sir, you'll be the second. If you can just say your name and assuming you're here for a reunion weekend, sure, your year would be great. Please.
My name is Bob. I'm here for a reunion.
Hello, Bob.
Welcome, Bob.
Previously called SOB for Sweet Old Bob, but that's another story. Question about your transformation techniques when you get guys involved with changing what they think is possible. Almost always emotions come up, and I didn't hear anybody talk about fear and how you had to address the individual fear. I'm sure you dealt with it if people were being asked to do more than they'd ever done before, because fear is usually the perceived enemy for a lot of entrepreneurs as well as the rest of us. Any comments on how you dealt with that, the emotional aspect.
I would say, let me address one fear that I ran into. The levels of trust within some of the companies I worked with was very low. And there was a fear of losing control. There was a fear of relying on other people. And I think that was one of the key roles we could play in terms of saying, giving them some strategies, helping them with some strategies for slowly trusting some of the people who they would be depending upon to grow their enterprises. The other thing which was interesting in the area of financing is there's generally a negative reaction in taking in equity investment to losing control of their company. But one of the good things is most of the social impact investors don't want to take control of their companies. So that really addressed one of the primary fears.
What I would add is that I think there is, you talked about fear, I think there is a risk aversion in the business Ghana culture and in West Africa. Here in Silicon Valley and the United States, we embrace risk, and we wear failure as a badge of honor. And if we fail, we think we'll get another chance and we'll learn some important lessons. And it's different over there for the Ghanaians and the West Africans. They are risk averse overall, I think, and they believe that if they fail, they won't get a second chance. And they'll not only let down themselves, but they'll let down their extended family, which is dependent on them. At the same time, I think the coaches and the Stanford professors did a great job of getting our customers to think big and to think bold in terms of transformation. And I could see a significant mind shift by the end of the program in all of my customers. And one of my customers said, being in the Stanford Seed program was like being in a boat and rowing down the river and then getting to the ocean and seeing that there's a big, wide, wonderful world out there. So there are cultural differences, and transformation takes a long time, but I think we did make a significant positive contribution in terms of a mind shift on a lot of the customers. They bought into the idea of getting on the path to transformation, that they could, over time, with help, become significant companies in their countries and in their regions and maybe world-class companies.
Thank you. We have a second question.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I'm an old roommate of one of the panelists. So my question deals with the issue of leadership or coaching style. And I wonder if you could reflect back on your experiences there and think about what experiences or what approaches seemed to work or didn't work, or in particular, if you had some very knotty problem where you really thought you had the answer, and yet you had to somehow convince or demonstrate the pathway to your respective clients.
I would say the key was to be yourself. Because I'm really a positive person, and I really don't like giving bad news. But one of my clients, I had done 360 analysis, I'd gone around, I'd learned many, many dismal things about this company. And the company had been around for 50 years, many people had worked there for 30 years. And the more and more I learned, I did design thinking, there was not a creative bud coming out. And I thought, I've just got to lay it on the line. So I did a SWOT analysis. The weaknesses and threats were gigantic. All of a sudden, I'm thinking, I've got to go tell him. So I said, the CEO was 34 years old, and I sat down and said, really, I need to talk to you. I feel terrible to tell you this, but this is this is my analysis. If this doesn't change, your company's going bankrupt. Anyone with a creative bone in their body is going to leave. Your people, the competitor, they have double the revenue per employee. You can't fulfill your things. You're losing market share, everything. And if you need a culture shift, I was thinking, heartbeat was going. I'm thinking, they're going to hate this. He goes like, okay, come tell this to the chairman. I went through the whole thing to the chairman, and they said, I'm so glad you told us this, because in our hearts, we have known this all along, but no one wanted to articulate it. And that weekend, the managing director went every manager in the company home, took this piece of paper, the SWOT analysis, and said, this is what Janet Seed thinks of our company. I am committed to transformation. Are you on board or not? And he went around the board, and I'm thinking, I was like so nervous to tell him all this, but it was the truth. And they came back on Monday, and they said, okay, Jan, each manager wants to meet with you to talk about how they can transform. You're right about all these problems, because they were the one who told me the problems. And I think just by articulating this, started the ship on the road to transformation. I mean, at the time, 50 years, people had worked there 30 years, 430 rank, they're out of there. Just no one was invested. Now they stay late, and they're working on a new factory, have 40 new products. But just by, really leveling and being honest and not saying I know all the answers, but presenting them was really a helpful way to get them on the road to transformation.
Thank you, Jan. Next question. Yes.
Hi, Diane Herr, Sloan 94. I had a question about what kind of training or background do the volunteers get prior to leaving for their assignments? For example, if people have primarily been CEOs or managers in companies, do they get any training on being coaches? Or if people are typically consultants, do they get any additional training?
So I can't speak for what's done currently. In our case, we had some orientation. We talked to some subject matter experts. We got a reading list. But fundamentally, we learned the material alongside the members of our cohort. But I think we had some grounding to absorb the material fully. We applied the professional skills we had learned over the course of our career. But the thing I want to accent or accentuate is that in general, in the coaching, we're not moving like on a global scale from a 9 to a 10 in terms of the level of performance or competency in a particular area. In many cases, regrettably, we're moving from a 1 to a 2 or a 3 to a 4. And what it takes to do that really is stuff you know. You may not think you know it. It's stuff you know.
And what I would add is that, and I'm only talking about the training that I went through, that we went through, is that there were two aspects that I remember. Number one, there was a great deal of emphasis on what I would call cultural introduction. So this is West Africa, and these are the issues in terms of a developing country, a developing economy. So a lot of economic development, cultural orientation types of things. And then when we got to Ghana, there were some Peace Corps trainers that Peace Corps Ghana used that met with us and told us about Ghanaian culture. So that's one aspect. And then the second aspect of our training was, I think, emphasis on coaching, being a coach in general. And so a lot of us have had coaching experience, but there was some formal discussion about being a coach, being an effective coach. And I think that's important because in Ghana, Ghanaians are very very friendly, very open to foreigners. And sometimes, even if you're saying something or doing something they don't like, they won't necessarily tell you. And so be able to pierce that sort of cross-cultural barrier, I think, is an important issue, while at the same time having high expectations and wanting them to get on the road to transformation and make a significant difference in their company.
And the last thing, one thing I'll say before we go to the question, having been involved in that, which is the other thing is the coaching continues to evolve as well. And as pioneers, this is a word of appreciation because you went out there and we continue to evolve the coaching. So with each new cohort, as you might imagine, at Stanford, we add things, we customize things, and so it continues to evolve as well. So thank you for your input, and it continues to evolve. Thanks for the question. We have another question in the back.
Richard Burke, Sloan Program 68, MBA 69. Water is something of great interest to me. I noticed in your produce company was washing with water. Obviously, they would have to wash with clean water or their whole business would go down the tubes. So, and also in terms of the rural people out there in the farms, water is essential for their health and their energy. What is the situation there in Ghana with respect to this water?
You know, it's interesting that you raised that, and you've really narrowed in on a key issue. I'll come back to the water, but I would like to expand. These businesses, as businesses, can't depend upon clean water. They can't depend upon reliable, steady electricity delivered at the expected voltage. They can't expect from the police force the kind of protection that kind of we expect. They really have to do it all. In the case of Eden Tree, we had a water tank. We treated our water with chlorine and other chemicals to keep it clean in terms of our production. We monitored our farmers to make sure they were using clean water rather than sewer water, which is used very commonly in agriculture. But one of the things in the transformation we emphasized was, first of all, we needed to put in an in-house lab to actually test the chemical composition of the raw materials. The other thing we had to do was a more comprehensive water treatment plant to use in our washing. I mean, the thing I didn't mention is we're building a world-class plant using the equity we brought in for Eden Tree to actually produce food at European EUC standards, because that's really what's required both to meet the demands of the distribution channel and to really deliver on the brand promise, which is safe, healthful food.
Thank you, Ed. Yes. Say microphone, yes.
I'm Christopher Concepcion, MBA 96 from the Philippines. I'm curious how much what can be done as far as mobilizing local capital. You're mentioning that you're bringing in other equity partners. Is there a way to source overseas remittances, or is there a way of mobilizing local savings and somehow agglomerating that and using them to help finance? I can understand the apprehensions, because we have that in the Philippines, that you want to be very careful, because raising capital is very precious, and one failure will destroy a lifetime of savings, or may destroy an entire family's lifetime of savings or their financial credibility.
Bill.
So one of the things that we heard from investors in West Africa, well, we heard from the companies, they can't get any money. From investors, we heard we can't find any good companies. And so I think one of the things that Seed helps with is getting companies ready so that investors feel comfortable and are excited about investing. So I think there is capital that exists. So it's not that there isn't capital. It's just that the businesses are not quite ready at a maturity level that investors feel excited about investing.
Yeah, I think another piece about the investing puzzle there is that the investors are being asked to use under use kind of a standard 2 and 20 kind of formula where their management fees are fairly tight, yet the due diligence and ongoing management demands of these businesses, each one of which from a global perspective can absorb a relatively small amount of capital, it just makes it very, very difficult to be in the private equity business because it's very hard on the fees you have to do the due diligence and provide the management oversight that's required. And I think that that's a key thing that Seed offers. I mean, the client that I was able to successfully get financing without asking the permission from headquarters, their question was, after you're gone, Ed, will Seed maintain your commitment to this company? And, you know, yes, we will. Right, Christian?
So I'm noticing we have 2 minutes left. And then we have to transition out of the space, I believe, right? So, and I see a question. So there's a gentleman in a blue shirt right there. I'm going to ask you to ask the question, and then we'll do something, a really quick response, and then rotate out to the table. We'll say that. So, yes, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Heatbrink from the great class of '74 with Clinton. My question is about the SEED program as you look forward. What other communities are you looking to roll the SEED operations forward to beyond Ghana? And two, if the job that you're looking to achieve is to battle poverty by job creation, what metrics are you seeing so far that really points to the success of the SEED volunteers in creating jobs?
Thank you. That's a great transition question to Christian can answer that.
I think maybe to start with the first part, at the moment we're looking at potentially 2 new hubs in Africa, one which has been decided in South Africa to look at the southern part of Africa, and we'll consider eventually at a later stage moving towards East Africa. So that's the way we are, and that's going to be the place where we plan to have a pause and look at where else we would go across the globe. The idea being to move all the way up eventually when we'll be full speed at the level of 7 hubs looking at South Asia, Southwest Asia, and Latin America, places where poverty is. Your questions on the matrix of poverty and our impact is a very interesting one. We don't have yet those. The element that we have today to assess and what we are doing is looking at elements like turnover, employees, jobs, that type of impact at the level of the company itself, because this is where we have our impact for the time being. What we do have, what is very interesting, that we have a dimension that the school do offer us, is that we have a research dimension. We do a lot of, at the moment, basic survey. We follow those companies, and we are going to look into their environment to start looking at impact. And I would say those kind of things are going to come as we go. As I said at the very beginning, we hardly have 16 or 18 months of experience in the field. We are building our data at the moment. I don't know if you want to add anything, but that's where we are.
So just before we leave stage, I'd just like to say one more thing, which is to really encourage you to consider this and to apply, or at least if it catches your fancy, learn more. I think all of us are available, you know, one-on-one via phone or email or in person to answer whatever questions and concerns you may have, as well as Joanna and Catherine on the staff. Don't deny yourselves the possibility that what you learn may convince you that this is right for you. The other thing I'd like to suggest is, even if it's not right for you individually, think about people you know in your groups of friends or communities for whom this might be a great opportunity. You know, while I hope that SEED continues to, you know, have many coaches from Stanford, it's not a requirement. And if you know people who would be right for this kind of opportunity, please encourage them to apply.
You're here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
you.